Jim Newsome has been part of the shipping industry since childhood and has led the South Carolina Port Authority to the top of the shipping industry, bringing all of South Carolina's citizens and businesses along for the ride.
I can't imagine Charleston without Jim Newsome.
Jim is probably one of the most well-respected individuals I've ever met in the maritime industry.
Jim came to South Carolina understanding the importance of growth. He's been a big picture guy in regards to that growth is beneficial to all the users of the port.
Jim Newsome has fierce competition to the south at Savannah's port, but he's never let competition change the way he conducts his business.
Well, GMP Trucking's been in business since 1936. We dray ocean containers in and out of the port of Charleston for customers in South Carolina and in the southeast region. Obviously, freight doesn't move in and out of the port of Charleston. I have 110 trucks that have no work. So the more business that can be recruited in the port of South Carolina, we've been able to grow our business parallel with the growth that the port has. So when the port doesn't grow, we have a tendency to shrink along with it.
If there's an employer in South Carolina that means more to our economy than the Ports Authority, I can't imagine who it is. I've always watched Jim Newsome as we've talked about potential businesses coming to South Carolina, and he is extremely supportive and available to meet with those businesses, to encourage them to come to South Carolina, to have the port invest in those efforts and in order to get good businesses here in South Carolina, which may or may not be direct customers of the port, but certainly help the customers of the ports produce better results in the long run.
The port really, in one way or another, touches every neighborhood in our community. Everybody knows somebody, lives next to somebody, goes to church with somebody's children or friends or someone who is connected with the maritime industry, whether it's a shipping company, a freight forwarder, a transportation company, or one of the myriad of companies that service the ports in one way or another. This is a port city, just not named a port city, it's a port city. The maritime industry is so completely integrated into the life and commerce of Charleston.
While Jim was born and raised in Savannah, his bosses say he's the only man for the job here in South Carolina.
I was fortunate enough to be a part of the search committee that was looking for a new director and CEO of the Ports Authority of South Carolina in 2009, and we talked to a lot of people.
I met Jim probably about a year before we started the search process, and I met him with another fellow board member who was chairman at the time, Dave Pozick. And Dave and I both looked at each other after we talked with Jim, and we both said if we ever made a change here in South Carolina with who's heading up the Ports Authority, Jim Newsome is the type individual we want to get here in the state. And we were very fortunate, timing was right, to be able to get Jim and his family to come to South Carolina.
Out of the blue, I got a phone call when I was sitting at my desk, and he said, "Clifton, this is Jim Newsome." I said, "Hey, Jim, how you doing?" He said, "I need to tell you something that I want to tell you myself." And I said, "Okay, what's it about?" And he said, "Well, I understand how big BMW is as far as your business here in Charleston, and you need to know that the ports and Norfolk Southern are partnering together to build an inland port in the Greer area, and that the intent is that BMW will be a big user of that port. And I know that that's going to have a devastating impact on your business. And I wanted to be the guy to tell you. I didn't want you to read about it in the news or hear about it from somebody else." And so, that gained a world of respect from me to Jim, and certainly he didn't have to do that.
Just look at the record. Charleston has regained its brand as a top 10 container port in the nation. All of our import and export traffic continues to grow. We're seeing our highest volume since the recession. Our earnings are up and our balance sheet is strong. More than that, we built an inland port in Greer with a rail ramp that has reduced traffic on our interstates and highways. And we're in the process of constructing a new container terminal. But most important, with Jim's leadership, we have been recommended as the first port on the East Coast to have its harbor deep into 52 feet. This will enable us to accommodate the global commerce of the future.
Charleston would be a far less successful place without Jim Newsome or the port. We would be a fraction of what we are. Everybody is driven by Jim Newsome's example. He wants to be the best, he's going to be the best, and they want to do the same thing.
Jim is a very interesting person. And he's a very compassionate person. Jim also is very good about thinking about others before he thinks about himself and making sure that he lets you know he's thinking about you.
Join us in congratulating Jim Newsome as the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce's 2014 Public Servant of the Year.